I'm Michael Hart. I'm a folk banjo player, and the style that I have kind of devised here I call old folk music, and yeah, I guess it's named after me because I'm kind of old folk. And today I would like to make while I'm no expert on this subject, I would like to make a musical contribution to black history, and I would share with you this. There's a historically reported fact, I guess, it was called a fact, that the banjo was it was the only instrument that was invented in the United States, and it was invented by a Caucasian man by the name of Joel Sweeney. That name is often thrown around, but I would just like to refute that today as being absolutely untrue. This banjo that I have here is called this is an African gourd banjo. It's a replica of banjos that were played in Africa probably 2,000 to 3,000 years before Joel Sweeney was even born, and he was given credit for this invention of the banjo in the mid 1800s, and by then the African slaves had been playing these gourd banjos for about 200 years in the United States. This is an instrument here. I'm going to flip it over so you can see the back of it. Here you can see it is made from a real gourd, and it is probably one of the oldest instruments there is, probably second only to the drum. And this was very much like a drum in that the top was cut off of this gourd, and a head put on it, and a piece of wood stuck through it, and strings put on it, and there you have it. And it kind of disappeared from black culture after the insulting stereotypes of the minstrel shows that came along. And I have read and seen on YouTube that it is making a little bit of a comeback, but anyway, it's a favorite instrument of mine. I'm going to do a black tune here to start out with. I played on this instrument right here. All right. Well, I'm going to pick up a couple more instruments here that from my collection of several banjos. This one here was a later one a later development of the banjo that was made without the gourd. It was made of wood, and it was a little sturdier than the gourd banjos, and sometimes the gourds were not available. And these were a very nice piece of craftsmanship on another replica instrument, not an old instrument, but a replica. There are some of these original ones that from the very beginning that were shown in the Foxfire books, Foxfire 3, if anybody's familiar with that study. And but anyway, I'm going to do a black spiritual on this called "Oh Freedom." This came from about the time of the Underground Railroad, and is in the public domain. So I hope you'll enjoy this. Oh freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. No more crying, no more crying, no more crying over me. Before I'll be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave, go home to my Lord and be free. There'll be singing, there'll be singing, there'll be singing over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried that's the style that I play is an old style that came from Africa actually, and it was called claw hammer today, and I have just a kind of my own version of that I call the Hart hammer. So anyway, for this last selection here, I want to do a song that I wrote about the first banjo I ever had, and this banjo is actually an antique. This one is not a replica. This is a banjo from before the turn of the century, made out of bird's eye maple, and it's a 4-string banjo. It might well have been played in you see the Mississippi River behind me there in New Orleans, and these were very popular in Dixieland jazz music. So, but I call this my banjo. It's kind of the history of this. I call my banjo Joe, and so anyway, here I hope you'll enjoy this. Oh, how I love my old banjo. He's so much fun to play. I can strum and sing most anything in the good old-fashioned way. It's claw hammer style picking that the old folks done for years, singing old songs in the parlor that bring listeners smiles and tears. He cost me only $40 many, many years ago, but he's been worth millions to me, and I love him so. I call him Brother Joe and even talk to him sometime. He's always there to listen, such a friend of mine. He's faithful and low maintenance, not like friends who come and go. I found pleasure without measure, just strumming on my old banjo. Bill Washburn once told me that banjos went to heaven on high, replacing the harp for angels, making sweet music in the sky. I asked dear God up in heaven as I knelt to him to pray, if I could bring my banjo to glory on that great resurrection day. 'Cause I read in the Bible there'd be shouting, singing and dancing too, praising the Lord with music like me and old Joe loved to do. But he said I better leave it behind, like every other worldly thing. But there'd be a solid gold one waiting for me in heaven, and I'd be welcome